Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USAPrepares.com. We're delighted you're here. And we broadcast Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. through 11 a.m. Central Time, right here on GCN. The broadcast is carried the next day on Republic Broadcasting. It's also carried on AM, FM, satellite, and other outlets, YouTube. And there's a link to your instructors on the website, USAPrepares.com. We have a call-in line if you'd like to call us, 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. To take us along with you as you travel, the listen line, 605-477-3249. And I'm filling in for Captain John Regan today. The financial state of the union.com. And if you'd like to follow along in class, please click on the news tab. Captain John Regan, thank you so much for being there for those days when I was unable to be broadcasting. Life on the farm has its challenges. So here's the question I have for you. First of all, thank you so much. I'm very serious. What's it like? What is it like broadcasting 2 hours a day? What was that? Did that change your life at all, or put a crimp in your schedule?
Well, if you've seen the movie Groundhog Day, you know, what, again? Didn't I just do this?
Yeah. You know, it's really enjoyable, but the clock waits for no one. 9 o'clock a.m. Central Time to the second, I connect, and when you connect, and here we are, no safety net. It's live radio, and with all of its potential for failures, and here we are. And you know, it's fun. And my son once said to me, you know, Dad, what's the big deal? You just talk. That's it. You know, the rest of us are working around here while you're talking. And I said, well, so you remember being at the university, and you remember final exams, right? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, you know, you prepare for them, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. And you have them once in a while, right? Once per class, per semester, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, I said, well, it's like that, just like that, every day. Is that similar to what you've experienced, John?
Well, it was actually worse than that, because you know how I'd been running out of time lately, and I didn't quite understand what was going on there, but I figured it out this weekend. And to set the baseline, if you remember last summer, and I guess go back further than that, you know, I use Evernote to clip the web pages from all the research I do. Mm-hmm. And I found out last summer that there's a 100,000 record limit for records that you sync online. You can have more than that on your local hard drive, but that's the limit for what stays in the cloud. So last summer I had to hurriedly archive off like over 40,000 records just to get space for myself.
Wow.
I'd been using Evernote for 8 years at that point. So 100,000 divided by 8, a little over 12,000 on average per year. And I didn't go in to break it down any more than that. That's just the average. We know things have been accelerating. So I went in and looked how many articles I've clipped from January 1st through mid-February, so for a month and a half. And keep in mind, I've been cutting back. There's some websites I don't even go to anymore because I'm trying to get ready for the Watchman Conference, and and still, it keeps on. Where's my time going? So when I took the number of records for the month and a half, if it keeps up that pace for the entire year, we're talking about over 33,000 articles.
Wow.
So nearly 3 times the volume of the average for the last 8 years. That's how much information is going through now.
Mm-hmm. And I believe, John, that reading that much information takes its toll on us here at USA Prepares, because so much of what we read is not really good news. I mean, less than 0.1%, we'd say, boy, this is great, well, absolutely great, but that's pretty darn rare that kind of thing happens. And when it does happen, it happens in a very, very small way as compared to the magnitude of the bad news. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, and beyond that, our minds are not really geared for this type of abuse. For every article that I've clipped, and I don't know what the ratio it is, it's definitely less than half, could be a third, could be a tenth, of articles that I read that I don't clip. And then you think about the headlines I've read, and it's just a fraction of those that I click into. So just over the last few years, it's got to be at least 1 million headlines, possibly, 5 million, maybe could even be close to 10 million. And our brains just are not, I say, geared for that type of abuse. And then given the content of what it is, it really is a challenge.
John, I remember a side note story. I remember when our children were young, and 2 of them actually attended the public training camp, elementary school, as some people might call it. And at the same time, we were taking our children to karate class multiple times per week, and the karate class was, maybe 15 miles away each way. And we thought it was important that they study the techniques of karate for self-defense. And we were always late. Mrs. Finelli and I would go over to the elementary school, pick up our children, race over to the, I'm speaking figuratively, race over to the karate class, and we'd walk in, and we were always late. And no matter what we did, we just couldn't get there before class started. And the instructor would look at me like, "You're late." But he didn't really say, "You're late." Well, one day, after being late so many times and not being able to fix it, we went in, and he looked at us, and class was already in session. And I said, "I'm sorry we're late, but I know what the problem is. It's school, and I'm going to fix that." So that was pretty much the beginning of the end of our children going to the public training camp. Why? Because it regulated our lives. It was absolutely in control. Its schedule dominated everything. It dominated when we got up. It dominated what we did at dinner time. It dominated the weekends, the homework. I mean, it was in control. And so we fixed it. We took our children out of the public training camp. And that's just one of the many reasons why we took them out. But I just wanted to share with you that, we may think we have some independence, and we may think that we're in control of our own lives. And that's not necessarily the case, especially if you have a job or if you have children in the public training camp. John, I've clicked on thefinancialstateoftheunion.com, the news tab, resources for February 2017. You've got some really great discussion items coming up. Fabulous. Is there anything that you'd like to say before we start?
Might as well just dive in.
Okay.
You know how I've been talking that there's a lot of charts out there that would suggest that we're in a recession. Mm-hmm. And another evidence to that effect is that Goldman analysts were looking at gasoline demand. And one of their oil experts said to achieve this 5.9% decline suggested by the weekly data, our model requires personal consumable expenditures to contract 6%, in other words, a recession. And they were quick to kind of back off on that it's just some sort of transient thing. But there's a lot more data out there showing that gasoline demand is softening, and nobody in the dinosaur economic world seems to understand why. I think those of you that have been listening for any amount of time understand that things are not good, and there's nothing that the current administration can do to fix the financial mess that we're in. The only question is, how long is it going to be? The optimism may buy us a few months at best, but the structural problem of the debt and the required spending, and then you add on, interest rates have to go up. It's a recipe for big change in lifestyle.
Yeah, and John, we've been talking about our observations, looking out the window, and we see fewer cars in Springfield, Missouri. We've been talking about that for years. Yep, everything's going really well, but there's not much commerce going on. Captain John Regan's with us. John, I'm looking at this Zero Hedge article that you've linked to on the website, thefinancialstateoftheunion.com, and it says gasoline inventories have hit record levels, and nowhere is this more obvious than on the East Coast. The biggest gasoline market in the U.S. is bursting at the seams. So, in a word, might we not say that we have a gasoline glut on our hands?
Yes, we do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it seems that it's difficult to shut off the supply spigot. We're dependent on demand to consume that supply. And it looks like we're not consuming as much as is being supplied. So now we've got storage problems. So John, do we have an inkling of an idea why this is happening? Is it just people are broke and they're thinking about, carpooling to work if they have a job? Are they thinking about, well, do I really need to take that trip? Because that's what we do. If we don't need to go there, we don't go there. And there are a lot of reasons why we don't go there, wherever there may be. I'm talking about, shopping. Money is one. People that we just don't want to see. Rude people. People who are on the road. Yeah, I'm talking about people that we don't even know we don't want to see, because people are getting more and more violent toward each other, more and more discourteous. What do you think it is? Is it the attitude that we have?
I had about 3 different articles on this, and they really, from, like I say, the pundits out there that are used to the past being normal, really don't have a clue. And I think it goes back to what I presented at the Get Prepared Expo. If you look at debt service and government spending as opposed to income at their current growth rates back then, I'm working on trying to get a different metric because some of those haven't been updated thanks to the last administration. it showed that those two items, government spending and debt service, were more than income by 2020. And of course, you can't get that far. And I backed that off to, if we can get halfway there, that would be 2017 and a half. So sometime at the midpoint of this year, give or take a little. And when you're working with something as complex as the economy, it's really tough because it's not just one big homogeneous, monster out there. There's pockets of things. And, for example, the real estate market, here in the Dallas area, it's fantastic because of all the California companies moving in. You go out to rural Texas and it's horrible, like much of the country is. And regardless of what happens with Obamacare, the repealing of it, the rates are already locked in for this year, so there's no real relief there. It looks like there's some relief because the IRS is not requiring you to fill out a particular line on the 1040 that says whether or not you had insurance. So if you didn't have insurance, you can get around paying the penalty, which puts some money back into the economy. There's a lot of optimism, which causes people to spend, but a lot of that spending has been with debt, and a lot of that debt has been for cars and for student loans and, even credit cards lately. And that can only go on for so long. We're already seeing the subprime auto loans having problems. We're seeing mortgages having problems. We're seeing bankruptcies going back up. So we're seeing a lot of tightening, and when there's tightening, you cut back where you can, and while you still have to drive to work, whatever you would do for personal reasons that are optional, you can cut back, and I believe that's where the gasoline demand is being cut.
I can see clearly what you're saying, and no disagreement from me. I agree completely that people are tightening their belts. And later on in this broadcast today, we plan on talking about farmletting and what is happening to the farmer. Captain John Regan, what's next?
Well, Buffett bets, and Warren Buffett has done a fantastic job during his lifetime of picking winners and developing wealth, and he's shaken up his portfolio there, sold off 89% of his shares of Walmart, which would suggest that he doesn't believe Walmart has the right stuff anymore, especially with Amazon doing what they're doing. And obviously all the, brick and mortar retail stores are experiencing problems because there's such an overhead to keep those physical stores, whereas when you're online, you don't have to have those storefronts. You just have the warehouse and you have the shipping, and you're out of there. Now, the problem is when you're managing the amount of money that Buffett is, you've got to put it somewhere. So he's decided to put it into airline stocks and Apple. So he's upped his ownership of American Airlines, United Airlines, Delta, and Southwest. And, I really have to wonder. I don't see where the demand is going to be that's going to keep airline stocks in good shape. And then Apple has had a great run. We just haven't seen the vision that Steve Jobs was able to provide for the company. I don't know if they can keep up their momentum. The smartphone technology has pretty much become commoditized now, and about all that's left is to go further into the virtual reality and the augmented reality realms. And to me, that's kind of more of an add-on instead of a new additional technology that they'd be able to capitalize on. So I'm kind of wondering about his choices, but I think the sale of the Walmart stock does signal a not so good period for retail upcoming.
John, I was at the Chinese factory outlet recently, and it was a large one. It was one of their super centers. I'm talking about Walmart, and they had an area in the parking lot reserved for those who order online. So I guess the way this works is you go to your computer or your phone, you place your order online, and then you go to pick it up, and they have their employees bring these carts to your car in the parking lot, and they will help load your car or your truck with whatever you've purchased. Now, I can sort of see buying some things online. I can understand buying a box of baking soda or detergent or soap, but I can't understand buying fresh produce. Now, that seems to be something that whoever is buying the fresh produce for the family tends to look at. If it's corn, each ear of corn is inspected. At least we do. If they're avocados, we look at each one and we try to select the one that is the best of the whole lot that's available there. Bags of onions, if we were buying those, we would look at the bags and see if any are crushed or whether they were old or whether any of them were rotten. The same thing with oranges and apples and bags of whatever else we might buy that would be allegedly fresh. I can't understand someone turning that over to someone he or she doesn't know who is an employee of the company. Meaning, how would, if I were at my car or my truck getting that delivery in the parking lot of that fresh produce, I might say, is that all you guys had? Is that the best one? Or did you pick out the worst one? Or is this the average? I don't think I want that. Now what do you do? How do you undo that in the parking lot? So I'm not up for it. However, what I do is, if I'm buying oil filters, you bet I buy them online. I don't want to buy them locally because I can get them for at least half off if I buy them online. If I buy car parts, if I can buy them online, I can save at least half as compared to buying them locally. But sometimes I'm in a jam. But car parts, if I can plan that in advance many times. So if you can plan, yeah, it's great. But I'm just not going to entrust the food that we eat, the fresh produce, to someone else. John, do you feel similarly, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've used the Walmart grocery service a couple of times, but I don't use it for produce. There's other items that they have that the store that I typically go to doesn't have, and you have to have a $30 minimum purchase to do the online shopping. But I tell you, it's really great to just pull up there. They're very prompt, and for me to not have to go into the store is a big win. So I like that part of it, but I agree with you. There's certain items that I just want to pick out myself.
Yeah, and how do you shop for value? Do you shop if you're shopping online, John? Do you compare 3 different types of the same thing, and then pick the one that you think is the best value, or the freshest, or the healthiest? How do you do that, or can you not do that online?
Well,
do you have that selection capability?
Yeah. Like I say, there's certain items that they carry that the store I do every week doesn't. So I know exactly what I'm looking for. I've got an idea of what the price is, because there is one thing that my store carries that's cheaper at Walmart. So that's about the extent of it. And that works for me.
I remember buying avocados at one of the Walmarts. So I was looking at the avocados, And they had 3 different bins of avocados. Same avocados, same type, but in 3 different bins at 3 different locations within 15 steps of each other. And so I looked at one, I said, wow, there's another one. Another bin. Oh, there's another one. So I looked at them all. But what I noticed, the people around me, while I was looking for the avocado that I wanted to get, people would just come grab one and leave. They're much faster than I am. They could instantaneously, from all the avocados in the bin, maybe 100, they knew exactly which one they wanted. Boom, got it, and left. That's not what I do. I'm a lot more careful about everything than that. Either that, or I'm failing to the point where I can't do things very quickly. It's one or the other. And I've noticed that people are able to drive at way higher speeds than I am. You know, if the speed limit is 70, I'm doing 70, probably, or somewhere a little less. I'm not doing 85. I'm not. And I'm thinking, gosh, wheel bearings could fail. I don't know who put, the wheel bearings on their vehicles. I don't know who packed the grease in them. I don't know. I don't know if the lug nuts are tight. I don't know about those things. So I'm not going to push the limits. Maybe they check everything on their vehicles and they're willing to do 85 miles an hour in a 70 mile an hour zone or 65 mile an hour zone. I just don't live life that fast, and I don't want to. I really don't want to. But sometimes I question, is it me or is it them? And I keep coming back to, I think it's them. I think they're pushing the limits. They're doing stupid things that I would just never do. I'm not saying buying electronically is a stupid thing. I'm just saying that people do things with a lot more haste than I do. I'm more deliberate in pretty much everything I do. And I know you are too. What's next?
Let's skip on down to where Bank of America is opening these new branches without employees. And they've opened their 3rd one, which that is what they have planned as a test bed of 3 of these. And I kind of have to wonder that they've got connections to another branch that is manned for anything that the automated part wouldn't take care of. And if you're not there in person, I'm just wondering if they would use an artificial person to talk to you, for example, about a loan or something, and you wouldn't even know that you're not talking to a person. But just the normal day-to-day banking, I guess, is a little bit beyond just an ATM. But humans need not apply because you're not needed here.
Well, I don't like it. I really don't. And I ended up closing a Citibank operated credit card because I didn't like the way they do business. So I guess our choices are becoming fewer and fewer as these companies get bigger and bigger and gobble up more and more of the market share. So John, even if we go to our local branch bank, the brick and mortar bank where we see the same people week after week, year after year, and we like them and we like going there, we still can't get a credit card from them because they don't offer credit cards. They offer credit cards with their name on them, but they're from the big bank, credit card banks that, like Bank of America. I mean, it's either going to be a Visa, MasterCard, Discover, or, one of the other big ones. But our choices are becoming fewer.
It's part of the push to the cashless society. I can already use an app on my phone to make deposits of checks. Payroll's typically direct deposited. And once it goes totally digital, what do you need bank branches for anyway?
Right. And let's fast forward to 20 years from now when children say, yeah, I deposited that check in my... What is a check? I've never seen one. Why do they call them checks? Why would they call them such a weird name like a check? Is there such a thing as a check, or is it just a concept? John Regan's with us, thefinancialstateoftheunion.com. We're at the news tab. John?
Let's take care of that Midwest farm bubble.
Yeah.
And while we're talking about this, keep in the back of your mind Agenda 21, where the goal is to get people out of the rural areas into these big cities where they're more easily controlled. And these things like the farmer shortage, the doctor shortage, all of that, start keeping in mind what's going on with the artificial intelligence and robotics. I believe you're going to see the farmers replaced with machines. Pretty much the same with a lot of other professions that are not expected to lose their jobs so quickly. I think that's going to happen and blindside a lot of people. But this article, Midwest Farm Bubble continues to collapse as farm incomes expected to crash in 2017. This comes from the latest USDA report, where they say real farm cash receipts, which means inflation adjusted, and of course you know that that number's fudged, so it's probably even worse than what they state, will be down 14% versus 2005 and 36% from the high set in 2012. And it's a combination of debt continues to climb, as well as prices dropping. They talk about a farmer here, cost for seeds, fertilizer, and equipment climbed so high, and grain prices dropped so low that he lost more than $120 an acre. He is now planting 170 less acres of winter wheat, and that's about a third of what he usually plants. U.S. farmers have sowed the fewest acres of winter wheat this season in more than a century, and farmers are actually taking other jobs just to make ends meet. Vincent?
Well, it's absolutely true. We've been reporting on that for years. In our neck of woods here in Missouri, I know just about every farmer has someone in the family who has a job in order to keep the farm viable. So what they're doing is they're going to work to keep the farm. In addition to farming, they have one or more members of the family who has a job, probably sitting behind computers, typing in digits and characters, so that there's enough income to pay the bills and offset the losses of the farm. And I mentioned that cattle prices were so low that we decided we absolutely weren't going to sell our cows, and we were going to try to carry them through the winter. What a rough winter it was. We've had, I think, darn close to record losses of our new calf crop. Calves were unable to make it for lots of reasons, none of which are ours. We've had the vet here multiple times, on-site house calls, if you will, or farm calls. Pretty expensive to have a veterinarian come and, repair a mama cow's vagina that popped out, or a calf who is trying to come out backwards and stuck, or a breech calf, or stillborn calves, or calves with pneumonia, or other problems that we've had with calving. It's been really rough. So we've lost between 20 and 25% of our new calf crop. Unprecedented. We're not the only ones. It's not from neglect. It's not from not giving them the right food. We're treating them like cows, giving them protection, shelter, clean water, vitamins, minerals, supplements. But what we don't do is we don't feed them GMO food. But they are being inundated with chemtrail sprays across the skies. And the trees are showing the effects of it. And the bottom line is that our son was in Springfield, and there was a farmer having a beef sale. He did what we did, and he kept the beef, and he decided he was just going to sell it at wholesale prices to anybody who wanted to come to a farmer's type market. And that's what he did. That was his solution. We're not there yet, but we'll probably be there too. We'll be right back. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked? Hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com with Captain John Regan. Captain John Regan, I'm ready.
You only think you're ready.
I think I'm ready.
You might recall this last political season that those on the left kept on saying it's just not fair to make people show a photo ID to have to be able to vote. Well,
Yeah.
the NAACP is requiring photo ID to attend their anti-voter ID protest march.
Yeah.
Don't try to apply logic.
Yeah. Yep. Don't do as I say. Yep. Okay.
Anyway, I thought that we could use a little levity with everything else, and we've talked about graphene lately, how they've found a way of producing graphene using basically stuff like vegetable oil, which you can grow soybeans, and that'd be a much better use of the oil than putting that in your body. And what wasn't in those early articles is what can we use that for? And I've found a couple of articles that, again, it's kind of like a good news, bad news, but one of the good news side is solar power could get even more affordable because graphene can replace platinum components. And when you dig down into the article, basically what it says is that the graphene can produce almost as much electricity. It's almost as efficient in the solar cell as platinum, but it costs a whole heck of a lot less. So we may, I don't know how soon we'd see this in the market, see solar power panels that cost a whole lot less but do the same job. And that's obviously good news. The bad news is they still want you to plug that into the smart grid. But, when you think about, we want to have some solar panels available to do things like, put on your well pump or recharge batteries. And this would certainly help your budget in doing that. Vincent?
Mm-hmm. Yep. On a different note, John, Top of the Hour News talked about a telephone, a red telephone. And it was allegedly a Bakelite telephone that was painted over in red, engraved with Adolf Hitler's name. This was a story at the Top of the Hour News that we just heard. And it has been sold at an auction. And I know someone who saw that phone, who touched that phone, and knows some of the people involved in the chain of ownership of that phone. And very interesting that that historical artifact was just sold. And so anyway, Adolf Hitler's alleged phone was sold at auction. It said, if I'm not mistaken, I just wrote down the price. It was over $200,000 that this phone was sold for. It was slated to sell for, well, it says here on Daily Mail, telephone Hitler used as he screamed his last desperate instructions as the Russians closed in on him in his bunker cells for $200,000. So it was the phone that was allegedly used at the Fuhrer bunker in 1945 at the last days of battling in Berlin. Just wanted to mention that, John. What's next?
Well, while we're on a Nazi side trip there, I was in Germany from 82 to 85, and I had several trips to Zweibrücken Air Base, and the the main switchboard there still had the Nazi emblems painted on from when Hitler was in charge. So there we were, 40 years after the war, and still using their equipment on one of our bases. I'm sure that was replaced long ago.
Yeah, I believe I have a tractor here at the farm, 1984. model John Deere tractor 2950 is the particular model of it. It was made in Mannheim, Germany. And I believe that that was one of the factories that was in operation during World War II. So, did it come from a plant that was used to manufacture munitions and weapons and equipment from World War II? I believe that is the case. And I have a photo, John. I have a photo album, literally photographs, World War II photographs of the Mercedes plant, and at the entrance of the plant, Nazi swastikas. In the boardroom, picture of Adolf Hitler. It was absolutely used to create equipment of war during World War II, the Mercedes-Benz plant. So, just a little tidbit of history. Every once in a while, I open that album and look at it, but it's photographs, photographs of that period. I mean, these aren't lithographs; these aren't in books. These are just original photographs, large photographs, almost the size of a piece of copier paper, each one of them. A Mercedes-Benz dealer offered me $500 for it, and I thanked him for his kind offer, but no, because there's only one of these. What's next,
getting
Sean?
back to other uses of graphene, one is flexible and foldable screens. There's enhanced batteries, much faster computers. Our current processors are working at 2.9 gigahertz because of the properties of graphene. Could go to 100 gigahertz, or basically more than 30 times faster. I can use coatings of it to prevent rust on vehicles and ships. Fuel-efficient cars by converting heat energy to power, and combined with the next one, number 6, faster and lighter aircraft, using graphene to make the cars lighter and more fuel-efficient. Extraneous stuff like tennis rackets, cycling helmets, and skis. One that you might not expect is replacement nerves, used as a possible delivery system to kill cancer. Night vision contact lenses, as a sensor for crops, so you can know if there's dangerous particles affecting your crops. Storing wind and solar power, and clean drinking water. So that's just a quick rundown of some of the things that you can expect to see out of this, coming what appears to be graphene explosion.
John, as you talk about this, I was thinking, during the processor, the central processing unit evolution, we went from megahertz, 4 megahertz, 8, 16, 40, 50, 100, 800, and we seem to level off in around 3 gigahertz. Do you think that's because we just can't make that next step without the new technology you're talking about? Is that what you think is happening?
I think the problem is heat.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of things in the computer that's, I remember the computer old days, that how hot they were when you had them on, and I was at the Pentagon when they brought in the IBM PS2s, and the surprising thing is you could touch the computer cabinet, and it was cool.
Yes.
And we've put the heat sinks and fans on the processors, but we haven't found a way of mitigating the heat issue. And because of the properties of the graphene, that takes care of the heat issue, which would let them ramp up the speed without having the heat problem.
John, just to share with our class what we're talking about, the heat problem. When I was in credit card banking in the mid-'80s, we built a data center with the latest IBM computing equipment, mainframes, if you will. And when we built the data center, it had a raised floor. So what was on the main floor was concrete. Then there was a platform floor that was raised about 18 inches to 2 feet off the floor. And between the raised floor and the concrete floor, that's where the cables went. but we would set the computers on top of openings in the raised floor, and we would pressurize the floor with air conditioning. So air conditioning, cool air was pumped into the floor, and it would travel throughout the entire floor, and the cool air would escape from the floor through the bottom of computers, these large refrigerator, freezer size computers, and with cutouts in the bottom that the cool air would go into, and then the warmed air would come out the top of the computers. So it was a huge problem. And all of the equipment that I managed, the data communications equipment, it was cooled the same way. It was in these cabinets, like tall file cabinets, if you will, with doors instead of drawers, and vents to let the hot air out the top. But in the bottom was pumped cool air. So that this cooling problem has been around for a long time with computers. And I believe you're absolutely right, that the problem with getting smaller and smaller and smaller and faster and faster and faster is the heat. And the electrons moving generate heat. And that would cause the computer to self-destruct if you can't get rid of the heat. Captain John Regan's with us. John, what's next?
Well, more in the bubble department.
Okay.
China has been pretty much driving the world economy these last few years. And what they did in January is simply stunning. They created a record $450 billion in debt. More than $500 billion. That's what they're doing to prop up their economy. And this just can't keep up. Sooner or later, bubbles burst, and as we've talked about before, this is going to be a global event when it happens. It's hard to say exactly what the starting point is going to be. It may be something we've discussed, or it may be something that we hadn't considered, which will, in hindsight, be perfectly obvious. And just to keep in mind what's happened over here with all of the quantitative easing, it's taken $3 of new debt just to create $1 in GDP. So if you think $3 trillion of debt to get $1 trillion of GDP, that's not a very good trade-off. And keep your seatbelts fastened. It's going to be an interesting ride.
John, we're talking about something that is unsustainable, just creating more and more and more and more debt, right?
It's more debt, and then let's go ahead and talk about the robo-government, because this gets into part of it as well. This comes out of the UK. Robots could replace up to 90% of government workers, and I'm sure it'd be about the same here, because so many of the jobs they do are, repetitive jobs that you don't have to, think a lot on. It's, doing the same thing over and over, and you have to wonder where will those people go. But whether it's the government jobs, the driver jobs, all those jobs, those are not baked in to those rosy Social Security trustee report numbers. And as those jobs start disappearing, the number of years before the trust funds run out, which are only IOUs anyway, those number of years disappear, and then it becomes pure additional cost to the government with less and less people to support it. So this is a trend that I'm seeing going on. Looking at what's going to be happening in the real economy and how that transitions to the financial and how that transitions back into the real economy with the problems of, our retirement and medical and pension funds not being able to support, and that tends to trigger unrest and wars. So it's not going to be boring.
John, as you were saying that, I was thinking back many decades ago when I came to the conclusion that one of the reasons that we have government employees at the low level is to keep them off the street, is to keep them from having nothing to do, to give them some importance in their lives, at least so that they think. And these are the people who we meet at the first level when we go into a government office, and they ask us for information, documents, proof of who we are, and so they can give us other documents and proof of things that we've paid for. And I really thought that, and still do, that the reason that some of these people have jobs is literally to keep them off the street, to give them some sense of worth that they would not be able to find in other venues. They would not be able to find that sense of worth in a manufacturing company, because manufacturing companies typically don't make jobs for people that they don't need jobs for. They don't make work. They have work, and they try to fulfill those customers' needs. They don't need to make up jobs. Captain John Regan's with us. John, I was thinking about the robots replacing up to 90% of government workers, and a lot of what government workers that we interface with just ask us to prove things, rudimentary, mundane things that, of course, we hate doing because they're always extracting money from us, asking us to prove something and who we are and show identification, or that we already paid for something, and then they give us another piece of paper that says we completed this year's requirements. But I can really see that robots replacing 90%, up to 90% of government workers. I really can. But then what do we do? Then where do they go? And what do they do?
And that's where you're going to see the universal basic income hit the scene, which will fail as well. But that's one of the last signposts I'm seeing before we go off the cliff, is that people don't have jobs, so it's not welfare. It's a universal basic income. Everybody gets it, whether you work or not.
Yeah, so then there's no need for us to achieve anything, because why should we? There's no incentive. There's no incentive to become creative, innovative, to strive to be the very, very best. Why? Why do it? Because we're all equal, right?
Well, it's not enough money to really live on, so you'll still need to be into things like drugs and prostitution if you want to make money.
Yep. What's next?
So, I have a little spy tech for you.
Hey, are we going to talk about Federal Express? Are we going to talk about them and tires?
Yeah, I'm hoping to get there.
Okay, very good. Very good. Okay, spy
so,
tech.
Google has another artificial intelligence system that takes pictures, and you know how you blur them out. It's called pixelizing them, so that you can't see like taking out the face or the license plate or whatever. Well, this AI can pixelate that, and they come up with some pretty decent. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's a lot closer to what the original image was. There's a link at the bottom that goes to the original Guardian article, and they've got some examples there. And I believe Google's even set this up where you could upload a pixelated image and unpixelate it yourself. So the thought of using that as a way of trying to enhance your privacy, well, they've got a system to undo that now.
Yeah, you got to wonder who sits in these conference rooms and thinks this stuff up. Who thinks up? Let's unpixelate. Wouldn't that be fun? And then someone says, "What a great idea!" And then it goes to the management level, then it goes to the vice presidential level, and then it reaches the president's office and he goes, "Sure, 17 million this week? No, let's do it. Sure. We'll put $100 million into that. Yeah, let's do it. Great idea. And we'll sell it to the government."
I don't think they talked about it, but think about if you start with just a normal image that's not pixelated, what you could do to enhance the image if you're trying to track somebody or otherwise gather evidence.
Yeah, I believe it's very, very difficult to become a private person today. Absolutely private. If you wanted to escape the system of surveillance, I think it'd be very, very, very difficult. How would you earn money? Who would hire you? And just using cash raises all kinds of questions. Where'd you get that cash from? Boy, where'd that come from? Did you steal that? Drug money? I mean, it's unbelievable. Just trying to be anonymous is tough today. I got a call from a credit card bank who told me that they were going to report me to a credit bureau agency because they didn't believe that an alias that I've been using for 10 years, which I've said on the radio. I've even said what it is, Anthony Soprano. I made the alias public many, many, many times. They said they didn't believe that there was an Anthony Soprano, so they were going to report me to the credit bureau agency. That's Visa. So I believe that if you want a Visa credit card, it's going to be a little more restrictive than MasterCard. And the one I like the best is Discover. But yeah, it's really getting tough. And so why do I have an alias? I'll tell you why. Because I use my real name on the radio. I don't call myself Michael Savage, whose real name is Michael Weiner. I use my real name on the radio. But sometimes when I go out, I would prefer to be not identified. Although some people identify me by my voice when I travel, which I don't do very much, travel. But that's why I had an alias. So I no longer have that with the Visa credit card because they were going to report me. So I said, just close my account. I've only had it for about 10 years. Just close it. What's next, John?
Well, are you ready for glasses with metal lenses?
Yeah, and that, it seems like, how can that be, right? Because most metals you can't see through. Yeah, let's talk about that.
It's nanotechnology. It focuses the light. So to me, it reminds me of like the pinhole glasses where you can put those on and it will focus the light and you can read with them, but you have to do it slowly because you only get to see a small part at a time. You've lost your periphery vision. But because these are so small, by the time you put them in there, you don't see them because, like I say, they're nanotechnology. So you've got all these, no telling, definitely into the thousands, if not millions of these in a lens. They can do things like allow you to take a photo of just one color. It can focus out different color spectrums. And I liked what it said, that these structures can allow for enhanced, the potential to produce images in much higher detail than normal glass lenses. So you can put that into a camera, and now whatever they can do to spy on you, they can do it so much better.
The first thing that I think about, John, when I learn of new technologies is how are they? I mean, my first attention does not go to, wow, this is really great. This is going to be so good for us. I don't think about that. I completely bypass that thought. And I go to, how are they going to use this against us? Because that's what they do. I don't think about, or I didn't think about, how could this be used in medicine for identifying maladies? How can this be used to help us? And by the way, while you were talking about the pinhole glasses, I took a piece of paper right here at the studio and I poked one tiny pinhole in the piece of paper. And I was reading, slowly, but I could read every single character on a printed page without glasses, without reading glasses. Absolutely. You're absolutely correct. So class, if you want to try it, just take a piece of paper and poke a tiny hole in it, like a pinhole, literally a pinhole. And then bring that within maybe an inch of your eye, and then you will be able to read. You'll have to, move your head like an animal does to see every character on the line, but yet it works. Absolutely works.
And you can find pinhole glasses pretty inexpensive. I got a couple of pair off Amazon years ago. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to worry about your vision changing because of the way it focuses the light.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe we should put a link up to how to make pinhole glasses. I'll see if I can find one.
Yeah, just don't expect to be able to do reading as fast as with normal glasses. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and I can't imagine driving with them. But let's see. I don't know. I haven't tried it, but I'm not recommending trying it either. Okay, what's next?
Well, I called the link FedEx retirement. The condition of U.S. roads are now so bad that FedEx is going through tires twice as fast as they used to. And, of course, that cost gets passed along to you.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's not only the cost of the tires that those costs get passed along, but the cost of changing the tires, procuring the tires, and then what they do with the old tires, and then what about all the parts of the tire that used to be there that's become airborne that you're breathing, and that's just FedEx. So I believe this is indicative of what I'm seeing. I believe it's indicative of how fast we are going through tires. And when I buy tires, I buy them looking at the life expectancy, and there's a rating like AA 400, AA 500, AA 600. And the higher that number is, the 400, 500, 600, that would relate to how long they're expected to last compared to the baseline, which would be 100. So a 400 level tire or rated tire would be expected to last 4 times as long as a 100, a 600, 6 times as long. So when I buy tires, I certainly pay attention to that, and I'm looking for something in the 500 plus range. That's where that'd be like the minimum where I'd be interested in starting at 500. But I like even higher numbers than that. But I am noticing that the tires that we use here are wearing out faster than ever before. No question about it. I'm in total agreement with this Federal Express report. So here's something that I was going to talk about that I have not yet talked about it, but the Cummins Corporation, they manufacture diesel engines, and they produced a report about miles per gallon. And what they said, very simply, was a concrete road would have a baseline that they would rate rolling resistance to and mileage. So a polished, worn-out concrete road without ruts and dings and dents in it gets 12% better mileage than a brand-new concrete road. Asphalt with a finish coat, 1% worse than the baseline. And I'll tell you a little bit more when we come back. Class, very quickly, the Cummins diesel engine manufacturing company produced a miles per gallon guide. And they say that even the road surface has a documented effect on fuel economy. And they say using a concrete as the standard baseline, a worn or polished concrete provides even better fuel economy. All other surfaces are worse. And here's what they say. So here's rolling resistance. So a concrete road, brand new, is the baseline. A polished or worn concrete road that's worn smooth has 12% less rolling resistance than a brand new concrete road. An asphalt road with a finish coat, 1% worse than the baseline. With a medium coarse finish, 4% worse than the baseline. A coarse asphalt road, 8% worse than the concrete baseline. And if you have the chip and seal blacktop road, 33% worse. And they say that road roughness can increase rolling resistance up to 20% due to energy dissipation in the tires and suspension, providing up to a 10% loss of miles per gallon. That's the Cummins Corporation. And we'll talk about that more at a future date. And that's the reason why in our barn where we keep our equipment, I have not put crushed stone. I just leave it dirt. Because if I had crushed stone, I wouldn't be able to push by hand vehicles or equipment through the crushed stone because the rolling resistance is so great. So I pay attention to rolling resistance, probably more than many might pay attention to it, but that's why. John Regan?
Well, in the time we have left, I do want to get to, from the bottom of hour 1, deadly dog food.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a recall issued by Evinger's Dog and Cat Food, There was pentobarbital found in some of their hunk of beef dog food. And if you have any of those, please check out the recall. They've terminated a 40-year relationship with a supplier. But this sedative is normally used to euthanize horses, cats, and dogs. And there was enough of it that made several dogs sick, and one of them unfortunately died. So we don't know exactly what went into those cans of dog food, but it was looks like it was from a euthanized animal. And I'd just like to take this opportunity again to thank you. Becky and I are so appreciative that you gave Lady a place to rest. She spent nearly 15 years with us, and we just didn't want her to end up as recycled pet food. And
you're talking about Lady, your dog.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, John, I see her every day. She's Lady's buried right here at the farm, right next to Beethoven and Mercedes and a bunch of our other animals, our cats. So we have a pet cemetery here, right here at the farm, right outside, maybe 150 feet from the farmhouse. And there are stones that they're not identified as to who is where, but there are stones marking each one of these graves, large limestones that are piled on top. But yeah, she's here.
And, I know nature's critters are going to break down the body anyway. It's just I didn't want her to become processed food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And that's one of the things that happens. We had a company that we did some computer work for in Virginia. And they would take animals that died, roadkill, birds that overheated in chicken barns, dead horses, and whatever they were called to pick up, and they pick them up, and they grind them up, and they render them, and they would make protein slurry out of it, and it would go into dog food and cat food. And some of the fats that they processed went into cosmetics, and we won't let our animals do the same, go into that process as well. Captain John Regan, thank you so much for being with us today and for sitting in for me.